All right, this video is for Unit 7, Lesson 4, which will be on how to work with zero exponents and negative exponents, which we've kind of seen in class, but we haven't really discussed what they mean or how to work with those yet. Okay, so we're still going to be using all the same properties of exponents that we learned before, and I'll review those as we go through the video. But the thing for today will be knowing what to do when we see a zero. Any base with a zero exponent will equal 1. Okay, so we can say x to the 0 is 1. And I will prove why that works. So if we think about, x to the 5 divided by x to the 5, okay, well, we talked about this two different ways. We talked about when you divide, you subtract the exponents. So 5 minus 5 is 0. Okay, but also, we can think about anything divided by itself, right? Like 7 divided by 7 is just 1, and 10 divided by 10 is just 1. So anything divided by itself, even x to the 5th, right, is also equal to just 1. And so these are really the same thing. And so from now on, whenever you see a variable to the 0th power, so we just say like y to the 0, you can immediately say that's equal to 1. And even if you have a really complicated thing like 5, x squared, y to the 0, z to the 3rd, well, you can just say that this is really just 1, and then 5 times 1 is just 5. So actually, we didn't really need to write the y at all. Okay, and furthermore, if I'm multiplying, if I do like x to the 4 y cubed, and I multiply that by, let's say, x to the negative 4 y to the 2nd. Okay, remember when we multiply, we add the exponents. And so that's going to give me, oops, where'd my pen go? Sorry about that. There we go. That's going to give me x to the 0, right? 4 plus negative 4 is 0. And y to the 5, 3 plus 2. Okay, but then again, x to the 0 is really just 1. So 1 times y to the 5th is y to the 5th. And we're done. Okay, so that's an easy property to work with. What's going to be harder to work with are when we have negative exponents. If we raise something to a negative exponent, what happens is the base becomes the reciprocal of that thing with a positive exponent instead. Okay, that's a lot of words, and I'll explain what that means. But basically, if we raise something to a negative power, it is like saying 1 over that same thing to the positive version of that power, and I'll give some examples. Okay, so if I say x to the negative 5th, what I can really do is write that as 1 over x to the positive 5th. And same thing if I have like, 2 to the negative 3rd, I can write that as 1 over 2 to the 3rd power, and then I know what 1 to the 2/3 power, 2 to the 3rd power is, is 2 times 2 times 2, which is 8. Okay, and if I have multiple things, so let's just say like, 5x squared y like this, what I can do is I can bring only the thing with the negative exponent underneath as a fraction. Okay, something like this. Okay, so things with negative exponents will go to the bottom, or if they're already in the bottom, let's just say you have like 4x squared over y to the negative 5th, then I can bring them back to the top. Actually, I should just say these are equal. Okay, so they go to the opposite place. So if they're in the top, they go to the bottom. If they're in the bottom, they go to the top. And then the negative exponent becomes positive. The reason why this works, if you just want to know, as an example, let's do x squared over x to the 5th. Okay, now we talked about this two different ways. You could think of it as writing out all the x's, like we did in class, and then canceling. And that leaves you with 3, but they're in the bottom, right? So what's left on top? Well, when we divide, really, we're left with 1. So this is 1 over x cubed. or x to the third. But we could also think of this, right, x squared over x to the fifth. Okay, we learned in class that you subtract the exponents. 2 minus 5 is negative 3. And so what we've shown, we've done this two different ways, but that shows that in fact those are the same. Okay, so now we're just going to practice with these properties. And this will be a little bit of review of the properties that we were doing last week. So I will do a few examples, and then you'll have some examples to try. And of course, at any point, if you feel like you understand and you want to try to get ahead of me, please feel free to pause the video, and then I will go through it. Okay, so for the first one, we need to remember the property that when I raise a power to a power, I just multiply the powers. So a to the second to the third would be a to the sixth, right? I multiply. So this will be a to the negative 5. Now, last week we were going to leave it like that, but the new directions will always be only positive exponents in the final answer. Okay, we'll see as we move forward in math, having a negative exponent can make things more difficult to work with. It's a little more difficult to understand. So I'm not going to give you full credit if you leave your answer like this anymore. I'm going to want you to get rid of the negative exponent by simply taking the reciprocal, placing it in the bottom of the fraction. That is the final answer we want. Okay, number 2. Well, this seems like it'd be complicated. And if we followed the property that we've been using, which is, right, distribute the power, and that includes to the hidden ones, we would end up with 2 to the 0, a to the 0, b to the 0, right? Because we multiply, but anything to the 0 power is really just 1. 1 times 1 times 1. This whole thing is just 1. And in fact, we didn't even really need to do any work. Okay, it turns out no matter how complicated the parentheses are, if you raise a set of parentheses to the 0th power, you can just say the answer is 1. So from now on, I could write a million things in here, even with negative signs and everything else. Okay, it doesn't matter if it's all raised to the 0 power, it just equals 1. Easy. Don't overthink it. Okay, you don't have to, even if you did distribute, it would still work, but you're doing too much work, you can just say it's 1. Okay, and then the last example, this will be a little more complicated. Here we do need to distribute. Okay, don't forget the hidden 1. And we multiply. So I'm going to start by writing it out. 3 to the negative 4, x to the positive 8, y to the negative 12. Then I'm going to fix it. So anything with a negative exponent, I'm going to put in the bottom. Anything without a negative exponent, I'm going to leave on the top. So the x to the 8 is going to stay, and the other two things I'm going to move down and just make them, positive when you do that. And you just put them next to each other because they're multiplied in the bottom. They were multiplied on the top. They're going to continue to be multiplied on the bottom. And then we just need to figure out what 3 to the 4th power is. 3 times 3 times 3 times 3 is 81. And you're done. Okay, don't leave negative exponents, and please simplify any numbers that can be simplified. Okay, again, if you feel like you understand and you want to try these examples, please feel free, and I will catch up with you in a moment. All right, first example would be x to the negative 6, but then I'm going to clean that up, 1 over x to the 6th power. Okay, again, we're not going to leave any negative exponents in our final answer. Number 2, very simply, is a 1, anything to the 0th power, no matter how complicated. Number 3, I need to distribute out. Okay, that includes that hidden 1. And so that gives me 5 to the positive 3, x to the negative 15, y to the 6. And then I'm just going to clean that up. I'm going to do this all in one step. So 5 to the 3rd power is 125. I'm going to keep that on the top because it was a positive exponent. And then the x to the 15 goes to the bottom and becomes positive. And that's my final answer. Okay, 4 is a little trickier. Don't forget to distribute to the top and the bottom when you do that. Okay, that's going to give me 2 to the negative third, x to the negative 9, y to the positive 6. Anything with a positive exponent stays where it is. Anything with a negative exponent goes to the opposite place. So if it's on the top, it goes to the bottom. If it's on the bottom, it goes to the top. Now, in this case, both of these things are going to go to the bottom, so there's really nothing left, but there is, right? There's still a 1 on top, always, when you bring things down. So I'll just write it in order. 2 to the positive 3, x to the positive 9, y to the positive 6. And then, of course, 2 to the third power is 8. And that's my answer. Okay, a few more examples for you to try. And again, if you feel like you know what you're doing, go ahead, try this yourself, pause the video. If not, I will do them in a moment. And as always, no negative exponents in the final answer. All right, for number 5, distributing gives me x to the 12, y to the negative 6, and cleaning it up, bringing the y to the bottom. Okay, number 6, anything to the 0 power is 1. So this whole thing is just 1. And then this whole thing. But careful, it's not the whole thing. It's only the x. Right? That's the difference here. The parentheses tell you the 0 is going to the whole thing. But here, the 0 is only going to the x next to it. So careful, this will turn into a 1, but you're still multiplying it by 2. And so the final answer is 3. Okay, 7, distributing it out. Okay, we get 4 to the third, x to the negative 9, y still to the 0, right? 0 times anything is still 0, and so that just goes away. In fact, you could have canceled it out back here. That would have been okay too. And then we're just going to clean that up. The x to the 9 goes to the bottom. 4 to the third power is 4 times 4 times 4 is 64. And I'm done. And the final example, distributing the negative 2 to all the things. Okay, that's going to give me 3 to the positive 4, x to the negative 10, y to the positive 4. And cleaning it up, the 3 to the 4th power is 81. And then the x comes to the bottom. It doesn't matter where you put it. So you could put it like this, or you could put it like this. Okay, when you multiply, the order doesn't matter. And then you are done. And that's the lesson for today. Okay, so if you go to Canvas, you will see there's an assignment, a few more questions testing, these various properties, very similar questions to these. Give it a try. On Wednesday, we will go over the answers so you can see how you did. I'll also give some feedback when you turn it in. And if you have any questions in the meantime, feel free to shoot me an email, and have a great day.